The bar was dark and smelled like sweat and cheap alcohol. Jiwon sat in the corner watching the door. He always watched the door. Old habits from his military days never died. His hand rested near his weapon, hidden under his jacket. These days, he worked as a bodyguard on this forgotten space station. The pay was decent and nobody asked questions about his past. Two aliens started fighting near the bar counter. Jiwon sighed and stood up. This was part of his job. He walked over calmly and grabbed both of them by their arms. They were strong, but Jiwon knew how to use their strength against them. Within seconds, both aliens were on the floor, confused about what happened. The bar owner nodded at Jiwon in thanks. Just another night. Later that night, Jiwon returned to his small room. It was barely bigger than a closet, with just a bed and a locker. He liked it that way. Less to care about meant less to lose. He was about to sleep when someone knocked on his door. Nobody ever knocked on his door. Jiwon grabbed his weapon and opened the door slowly. A tall figure stood in the hallway, wearing a heavy cloak that covered most of her body. But Jiwon could see she was not human. She was too tall, almost 8 feet. 4 arms were visible under the cloak. The woman spoke in perfect English, though her voice had a strange musical quality. She said her name was Taryn. She needed to talk to him about a job. A private job. Jiwon almost said no, but something in her voice made him pause. She sounded desperate. He let her inside. Taryn removed her hood. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her eyes were large and golden, with no visible pupils. She was beautiful in an alien way, but her face showed pain and fear. Jiwon had seen that expression before on mothers who lost their children. She sat down and placed a metal case on the table. When she opened it, Jiwon saw more money than he had earned in 5 years. Quantum credits that could be spent anywhere in the galaxy. She said she needed his help. Her daughters had been taken. She needed someone to help her get them back. Jiwon looked at the money, then at her. He asked why an alien queen needed a human. Surely she had armies and guards. Taryn closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, tears were running down her face. She explained that she could not trust her own people. Someone close to her had betrayed her. The kidnappers were from her own military. If she used official channels, her daughters would die. She had heard about Jiwon through her contacts in the underworld. They said he was good at impossible jobs. They said he never left anyone behind. She needed someone like that. Someone who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Jiwon wanted to refuse. This was not his problem. These were not his people. But then Taryn showed him a hologram. 3 young girls appeared in the air above the table. The oldest looked strong and serious. The middle one had curious, intelligent eyes. The youngest was smiling, holding a small toy. They all had their mother's golden eyes. Something about the youngest girl made Jiwon's chest hurt. She reminded him of someone he failed to protect long ago. His little sister had that same innocent smile. She died when Jiwon was supposed to be watching her, a bomb in a shopping center. He was too far away to save her. That was why he left Earth. That was why he became what he was. He asked how old the girls were. Taryn said the oldest, Hana, was 19. The middle daughter, Yuna, was 16. The youngest, Mira, was only 13. All 3 were taken from a diplomatic meeting 3 days ago. The guards with them were all killed. Taryn barely escaped. Jiwon asked who took them. Taryn explained about Commander Varric, one of her top military leaders. He wanted to take over the Empire. He believed Taryn was too soft, too focused on peace. He wanted to use her daughters as hostages to force her to give up her throne. If she refused, he would kill them. The human looked at the money again. It was enough to retire, to disappear forever. He could go anywhere, do anything, but he knew he would never spend it in peace. Every time he closed his eyes, he would see those 3 girls. He would see his sister's face. He pushed the case back toward Taryn and said he would do it. But not for money. She looked confused. Jiwon explained that he wanted half now and half when the job was done. She agreed immediately. He shook his head. She did not understand. The half he wanted now was information. Everything she knew about where the girls were held, who guarded them, and what defenses they had. Taryn smiled for the first time. It was a sad smile, but genuine. She said she knew she chose the right person. She pulled out a data pad and began sharing everything she knew. The girls were held on a moon called Draxus, in an old military base. It was heavily guarded. The moon's atmosphere was toxic to most species. Getting there would be dangerous. Getting inside would be nearly impossible. Ji-won listened carefully, memorizing every detail. He asked questions about guard rotations, supply deliveries, and emergency protocols. Taryn answered everything she could. Some things she did not know. Varric had been planning this for a long time. He was not stupid. After 2 hours, Ji-won had enough information to start planning. He told Taryn to rest. They would leave in the morning. She asked where she should stay. Ji-won pointed to his bed. He would sleep on the floor. She tried to refuse, but he insisted. She needed to be strong for her daughters. That night, Ji-won could not sleep. He lay on the cold floor, thinking about what he agreed to do. This was suicide. He was one human going against an alien military. They had better weapons, better armor, better everything. But they did not have his desperation. They did not know what it felt like to fail someone and live with that guilt. He heard Taryn crying softly in the dark. She tried to hide it, but sound carried in the small room. Ji-won pretended not to notice. Everyone had the right to their pain. He knew that better than anyone. In the morning, they prepared to leave. Ji-won packed light, just his weapons, some basic supplies, and a photo he kept hidden in his jacket. It was old and worn, showing a young man and a little girl. Both were smiling. That man seemed like a stranger now. Taryn watched him pack. She asked if he had family waiting for him back on Earth. Ji-won said no. Everyone he cared about was gone. That was why this job was perfect for him. He had nothing to lose. Taryn looked at him with her golden eyes and said softly that maybe he had something to gain. They left the station on a small ship Taryn had hidden nearby. It was old but fast. As they flew through space toward Draxus, Ji-won studied the base's layout on the data pad. He asked Taryn about Veltharian military training. She explained their combat styles, their weapons, their tactics. Everything was advanced, precise, and efficient. Ji-won smiled. That was good. Advanced meant predictable. Efficient meant they followed patterns. Humans were not advanced or efficient. Humans were messy and unpredictable. That was his advantage. That was how he would win. Taryn asked what he was thinking. Ji-won told her about an old saying from Earth. When fighting someone stronger, be smarter. When fighting someone smarter, be crazier. He planned to be both. Taryn did not look reassured, but she nodded. She had no choice but to trust him. As the moon of Draxus appeared in the distance looking dark and poisonous, Ji-won felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. Maybe he could not save his sister. Maybe he could not undo his past mistakes. But he could save these 3 girls. He could give their mother back what she lost, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The moon of Draxus looked worse up close. Its surface was covered in jagged rocks and deep cracks that leaked poisonous gas. The sky was a sick yellow color, and lightning flashed constantly in the clouds. Ji-won understood why Varric chose this place. Nobody would come here unless they had to. They landed the ship in a canyon several miles from the military base. Taryn wanted to go immediately, but Ji-won refused. He made her sit down and study the base's layout with him. She was frustrated. Every hour they waited was another hour her daughters suffered. But Ji-won was firm. Rushing in would get everyone killed. For 2 days they watched the base from a distance using scanning equipment. Ji-won took notes on everything. How many guards were at each entrance? When the shifts changed? What kind of vehicles came and went? Taryn thought he was being too careful. She did not understand that this was how humans survived against stronger enemies. Patience and planning. On the 3rd day, Taryn could not take it anymore. She started arguing with Ji-won, saying her daughters did not have time for his human caution. Ji-won stayed calm. He asked her what would happen if they died trying to save the girls. Who would rescue them then? Taryn had no answer. She sat down and put her face in her hands. All four of her hands were shaking. Jiwon sat beside her. He did not touch her, but he spoke quietly. He told her about his sister, how she died because he was not prepared, how he carried that guilt every day. He would not let that happen again. He would get her daughters back, but they had to do it right. Taryn looked at him with her golden eyes and nodded slowly. That night, Taryn told Jiwon about her daughters. Hana was training to be the next empress. She was strong and serious, always practicing with swords and studying military tactics. Yuna loved learning about other cultures. She collected books and artifacts from 100 different worlds. She was fascinated by humans especially. Mira was the youngest and most innocent. She loved to sing and paint. She still believed the universe was good. Jiwon listened to every word. He needed to understand who he was saving. They were not just targets in a mission. They were real people with real lives. Knowing that made him more determined. It also made him more afraid. On the fourth day, Jiwon was ready. He had a plan. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it could work. He explained it to Taryn. They would disguise themselves as supply delivery workers. A cargo ship was scheduled to arrive that evening. They would intercept it, take the uniforms, and walk right through the front door. Taryn thought this was insane. Veltharian security systems would scan them. They would be caught immediately. But Jiwon smiled. He was counting on Veltharian confidence. They were so sure their technology was perfect that they never expected someone to simply lie their way inside. Psychology was just as important as technology. They intercepted the supply ship without violence. Jiwon convinced the crew they were replacement workers using forged documents he created. The crew was confused but did not question it. Veltharians were used to following procedures. Once Jiwon and Taryn had the uniforms and access codes, they let the crew go. No need to hurt innocent people. Approaching the base was terrifying. Taryn had to hide her extra arms under a bulky jacket. Jiwon wore a helmet to hide his human features. They drove the supply vehicle right up to the main gate. A guard approached and asked for identification. Jiwon handed over the stolen credentials and acted bored, like this was just another routine delivery. The guard scanned the documents. For a moment, Jiwon thought they were caught. His hand moved closer to his hidden weapon, but the guard just waved them through. They were inside. The base was huge and maze-like. Jiwon had memorized the layout, but seeing it in person was different. They pushed their cart through the corridors, trying to look natural. Other workers passed by without giving them a second glance. Everyone was too focused on their own jobs to notice anything wrong. They reached a security checkpoint. This one was more serious. 2 armed guards stood beside a scanning machine. Jiwon knew the machine would detect their weapons. He could not talk his way past this one. He would have to fight. But then something unexpected happened. Another alarm went off somewhere in the base. It was not related to them, just a routine drill, but it was enough distraction. The guards turned away to check their communications. Jiwon and Taryn slipped past while everyone was confused. Sometimes luck was better than skill. They found a computer terminal in an empty room. Yuna would be proud, Taryn said as she hacked into the system. She searched for where her daughters were being held. The computer showed 3 different locations. The girls were separated. That made sense. It was harder to rescue them if they were not together. Jiwon studied the map. Mira was closest. She was being held in the detention wing on this level. Hana was in a different building, probably because she was the most dangerous. Yuna was in the communications section. Varric was keeping her there to prevent her from hacking his systems. Smart. They needed to split up. Jiwon would go after Hana and Yuna. Taryn would stay near Mira. It was the only way to save all 3 before the alarm was raised. Taryn did not like this plan. She wanted to be the one to rescue her daughters, but Jiwon convinced her that her presence would be detected faster. She was too recognizable. He was just another anonymous human. Before they separated, Taryn grabbed Jiwon's arm with one of her hands. She looked directly into his eyes and said thank you, not for the rescue, but for giving her hope. Jiwon nodded. He promised her that he would bring her daughters back. All 3 of them. Or he would die trying. Jiwon made his way to the communications section first. It was heavily guarded, but most of the guards were watching the exterior doors, not the interior hallways. He climbed through the ventilation system, something his military training prepared him for. The vents were tight and hot, but they let him move unseen. He found Yuna in a locked room working on some kind of alien computer. She looked tired but unharmed. When Jiwon dropped from the vent, she jumped in surprise. Then she saw his face and realized he was human. She asked if her mother sent him. Jiwon nodded and began working on the door lock. Yuna watched him with curious eyes. She asked questions about Earth while he worked. What were humans really like? Were the stories true about their wars and music and art? Jiwon answered briefly, focused on the lock. Finally, it clicked open. Yuna smiled and said humans were more interesting than she imagined. They moved to find Hana next. This was more dangerous. Hana was being held in a maximum security cell because of her combat training. There were guards everywhere. Jiwon could not fight them all. He needed another approach. Yuna had an idea. She could hack the security system and create a false alarm in another part of the base. That would draw the guards away. Jiwon was impressed. The girl was as smart as her mother said. They found another terminal and Yuna went to work. Her fingers moved incredibly fast across the controls. Within minutes, alarms blared in the opposite wing. Guards rushed away to investigate. Jiwon and Yuna moved quickly to Hana's cell. Through the small window, Jiwon could see her sitting on the floor meditating. Even in captivity, she maintained her discipline. When Jiwon opened the door, Hana moved like lightning. She attacked him before he could speak, probably thinking he was another guard. Jiwon defended himself without hurting her. He blocked her strikes and stepped back. Yuna shouted for her sister to stop. It was a rescue. Hana stopped and looked at Jiwon carefully. She saw he was human. She was skeptical. A human was rescuing them. Jiwon did not have time to explain. He just said their mother was waiting and they needed to move. Hana hesitated, then nodded. Family came first. Meanwhile, Terran had reached Mira. The youngest daughter was crying when her mother appeared. Terran held her tightly with all four arms. Mira asked if this was real or another trick. Varric's people had shown her fake videos trying to break her spirit. Terran promised it was real. She would never leave her. But then Varric himself appeared with soldiers. He had been waiting for this. He knew someone would try to rescue the girls. He just did not expect it to be Terran personally. He smiled coldly and told his soldiers to surround them. Terran pushed Mira behind her and drew her energy blades. If this was the end, she would fight like an empress. The situation looked hopeless. But Terran was not alone anymore. Jiwon, Hana, and Yuna arrived just in time. They had heard the commotion and came running. Now it was 4 against a dozen. Still bad odds, but better than before. Jiwon looked at Terran and smiled. Time to be crazy. The first soldier to attack Terran never saw her blade coming. She moved with incredible speed for someone so large. Her energy blade cut through his armor like paper. 2 more soldiers rushed forward. Terran spun and struck them both down with her other blade. Years of royal training made her a deadly warrior. Hana fought beside her mother with the same graceful violence. She did not have weapons, but she did not need them. Her hands and feet were weapons enough. She broke one soldier's arm and knocked another unconscious with a spinning kick. Even after days in captivity, she was still dangerous. Jiwon took cover behind a pillar and fired his weapon carefully. Each shot counted. He did not have unlimited ammunition like the Veltharian soldiers. But he did not miss. 3 soldiers fell before they realized where the shots came from. Jiwon moved to a new position before they could return fire. Stay moving, stay alive. Yuna stayed behind cover, but she was not helpless. She used her data pad to hack into the base's systems. Suddenly, doors locked randomly, trapping some soldiers away from the fight. Lights flickered and went dark in sections of the corridor. Security cameras showed false images. Yuna was fighting with her mind, and it was working. Mira watched everything with wide eyes. She was terrified but trying to be brave. Her mother had told her to stay down, to hide. But when she saw one soldier aiming at Jiwon's back, she did not hesitate. She threw a piece of broken metal at the soldier's head. It hit him hard enough to ruin his aim. Jiwon turned and finished the job with a quick shot. He glanced at Mira and nodded thanks. She had just saved his life. Varric watched the fight with cold anger. This was not going as planned. A human and 3 prisoners should not be winning against his elite soldiers. But they were. He grabbed his own weapon and joined the battle. If his soldiers could not handle this, he would. Varric aimed at Terran and fired. The shot hit her in the shoulder, spinning her around. She fell to one knee, her blade dropping from her hand. Varric smiled and walked forward. Finally, the false empress would fall. But before he could fire again, Hana was there. She threw herself at Varric with a scream of rage. The two of them fought hand to hand. Varric was stronger and more experienced. Hana was faster and angrier. They traded blows that would have killed normal people. Hana's knuckles bled. Varric's face was bruised. Neither would back down. Ji-won saw Terran was hurt and ran to her. He pulled her behind cover and checked her wound. It was bad, but not fatal. The energy blast had burned through her armor and into muscle. She needed medical help soon. Terran pushed him away and pointed at her daughters. Forget about her. Get the girls to safety. Ji-won ignored her. He tore fabric from his jacket and wrapped her shoulder to stop the bleeding. He told her that her daughters needed their mother alive. If she died here, Varric won. Terran looked at him with pain in her eyes but nodded. She understood. More soldiers were coming. Ji-won could hear their boots in the corridor. They were trapped. The only way out was through the hangar bay, but that was on the opposite side of the base. They would never make it while fighting. They needed a different plan. Yuna had an idea. She could trigger the base's emergency evacuation protocol. It would open all the exterior doors and sound alarms everywhere. In the chaos, they might be able to reach the hangar. It was risky. The exterior doors would let in the toxic atmosphere. But they had environmental suits stored in the hangar. If they moved fast enough, they could survive. Ji-won agreed. It was their only chance. Yuna started typing on her datapad, breaking through security firewalls. Hana was still fighting Varric. Ji-won shouted at her to fall back. They were leaving. Hana blocked one more of Varric's punches, then kicked him hard in the chest. He stumbled backward and she ran. The evacuation alarm started blaring. Massive doors began opening throughout the base. Yellow toxic gas started seeping inside. Soldiers panicked and ran for emergency suits. In the confusion, Ji-won led the group toward the hangar bay. Terran leaned on Mira for support. Hana and Yuna ran ahead to clear the path. They reached the hangar bay just as the toxic gas was getting thick. Ji-won could feel it burning his throat. Everyone was coughing. They found environmental suits and put them on quickly. The suits were designed for Veltharians, too big for Ji-won and uncomfortable on Terran's injured shoulder. But they worked. The hangar had several ships. Most were military fighters, heavily armed but designed for single pilots. There was one cargo transport that could fit everyone. It was not made for combat, but it would have to do. Ji-won ran to the ship and started the engines. He had no idea how to fly Veltharian technology, but the controls were similar enough to human ships. He hoped. Yuna pushed him aside and took the pilot seat. She had studied dozens of ship designs. She could fly this. Ji-won moved to the weapons station. The ship had 2 small defensive guns. Not much, but better than nothing. Everyone else strapped into seats. Terran held Mira close with her good arm. They launched just as Varric's soldiers reached the hangar. Shots hit the ship's hull, but Yuna was already accelerating. They burst through the hangar doors and into the toxic atmosphere. The ship shook violently. Alarms beeped everywhere. But they were free. Then Varric's gunship appeared behind them. It was faster and much better armed. Varric was not giving up. He fired missiles that streaked toward them. Yuna pulled the ship into a steep dive, flying dangerously close to the rocky surface. The missiles exploded against the ground, sending up clouds of debris. Ji-won fired back with the defensive guns, but the shots just bounced off Varric's shields. They were outmatched. Varric fired again. This time, one missile hit the cargo ship's engine. Alarm screamed. They were losing power. Yuna fought with the controls, trying to keep them in the air. Ji-won looked at the toxic storm clouds ahead. Lightning flashed inside them. The clouds were full of acid that would eat through most ship hulls. But their small cargo ship was older, built with simpler materials that might resist the acid better. It was a crazy idea. It would probably kill them. But staying here definitely would. He told Yuna to fly into the storm. She looked at him like he was insane. He probably was. But it was their only chance. Varric's gunship was too valuable. He would not risk it in the acid clouds. Yuna took a deep breath and turned the ship toward the storm. They entered the clouds and everything went dark. Acid rain hammered the hull. Lightning struck nearby, making the lights flicker. The ship was falling apart around them. Warning lights covered every screen. But they were still flying. Behind them, Varric followed into the storm. His larger ship immediately started taking damage. The acid ate through his advanced shields. His weapon systems failed. He was forced to turn back or lose his ship. He watched the cargo transport disappear into the storm. He had lost. For now, Una guided them through the storm using instruments alone. She could not see anything through the acid rain on the windows. Every second felt like an hour. Then suddenly they broke through the clouds on the other side. Clear space stretched ahead. They had made it. The ship was barely holding together. Hull plates were melting. One engine was completely dead. But Una managed to get them away from the moon and into open space. They just needed to reach somewhere safe, somewhere they could rest and plan their next move. Hana was looking at her mother's wound. It had started bleeding again during the escape. Taryn's face was pale. She needed real medical attention soon. Jiwon asked if anyone knew where to find a doctor. Una said there was an abandoned space station a few hours away. Nobody went there anymore, but it might still have working medical equipment. They set course for the station. Everyone was quiet, processing what just happened. They had survived. Barely. Taryn looked at each of her daughters. Mira was safe in her arms. Una was flying the ship with skill. Hana sat nearby, bruised but unbroken. They were together again. That was all that mattered. Then Taryn looked at Jiwon. The human was checking his weapons, reloading and cleaning them with practiced efficiency. He looked tired but determined. She had hired him to rescue her daughters. He had done that and more. He had fought beside them like family. She realized she no longer saw him as just a hired soldier. He had become something more. Mira noticed her mother watching Jiwon. The youngest princess smiled and whispered that she liked the human. He was brave and kind. Taryn smiled too. Yes, he was. Hana overheard and grunted. She would never admit it, but the human had proven himself. Even Una glanced back at Jiwon with respect in her eyes. Jiwon felt their eyes on him and looked up. He asked if something was wrong. Taryn shook her head. Nothing was wrong. For the first time in days, something was right. Her daughters were safe. They had a human warrior watching over them. And somewhere ahead was a place to rest and heal. But Jiwon knew this was not over. Varric was still out there. He would not stop hunting them. And somewhere in Taryn's government was a traitor helping him. They had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. Still, looking at the three sisters alive and together, Jiwon felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. The abandoned space station appeared ahead, dark and silent against the stars. It looked like it had been empty for years, but it would serve their purpose. They could hide here, treat Taryn's wound, and figure out their next move. Una brought the damaged ship in carefully, landing in the station's old docking bay. The abandoned space station was cold and empty. Dust covered everything. The air recyclers still worked, barely. They found a medical bay on the 3rd level. Most of the equipment was old, but Jiwon had been a field medic in the military. He knew how to work with limited supplies. Taryn lay on the medical table while Jiwon cleaned her wound. The energy blast had done serious damage. Her alien biology was different from humans, but pain was universal. She gritted her teeth and did not make a sound. Hana held her mother's hand. Mira sat nearby, watching with worried eyes. Una searched the station's computers for any useful information. As Jiwon worked, Hana started to respect him more. She had thought humans were weak and primitive, but this human was skilled and calm under pressure. He worked on her mother's injury with steady hands, never hesitating. When he finished, the wound was closed and bandaged properly. Taryn would recover. After the medical work was done, Hana felt dizzy. She had been hiding her own injury. During the fight with Varric, she took a hard hit to her ribs. She did not want anyone to worry, so she said nothing, but now the pain was too much. She stumbled and nearly fell. Jiwon caught her and made her sit down. He examined her ribs carefully. 2 were cracked, maybe broken. He wrapped them tightly and gave her medicine for the pain. Hana tried to protest. She was supposed to be strong. Jiwon told her that being strong meant knowing when to accept help. Those words stayed with her. That night, they all stayed in the medical bay. It was the warmest room in the station. Mira could not sleep. She kept having nightmares about Varric's soldiers. Jiwon noticed and sat beside her. He started telling her stories about Earth. Stories about mountains and oceans and cities filled with lights. Mira listened and slowly fell asleep. While everyone slept, Yuna worked on the station's computers. She was trying to access galactic news networks to see what was happening in the Empire. What she found was disturbing. Varric had announced that Terran was dead. He claimed the rescue attempt failed, and everyone died in the explosion. He was taking control of the government. Yuna dug deeper into the data files. She found encrypted messages between Varric and someone in the Imperial Palace. Someone close to Terran was helping him. The messages went back years. This conspiracy was bigger than they thought. Yuna felt sick as she read the files. Someone her mother trusted had betrayed them all. In the morning, Yuna showed everyone what she found. Terran could not believe it. Who would betray her? She had been fair and kind to her advisors. She treated them like family. Yuna pulled up the message logs. The traitor's code name was Shadow. The messages were always careful, never using real names. Jiwan studied the messages carefully. He had experience with intelligence work from his military days. He noticed patterns in how Shadow wrote. The person was educated and high-ranking. They knew military protocols and palace schedules. That narrowed it down to maybe 5 people in Terran's inner circle. He suggested they set a trap. They would send a fake message through official channels, claiming they were hiding at a specific location. If Varric showed up there, they would know the information leaked through Shadow. It was risky. If Shadow figured out the trap, they would be in danger. But they needed to know who the traitor was. Terran agreed to the plan. She sent an encrypted message to her most trusted advisors, claiming they were hiding on a mining colony in the Outer Rim. Then they waited. It took only 6 hours. Varric's forces mobilized toward the fake location. The trap worked. Someone had leaked the information. Yuna traced the leak back through the network. The message had been forwarded from inside the Imperial Palace. She narrowed it down to a specific terminal. When she saw whose terminal it was, she felt her heart break. Admiral Kira, the woman who had been Terran's friend since childhood, the woman who trained Hana in combat. The traitor was someone they all loved. Terran refused to believe it at first. Not Kira. Anyone but her. They had grown up together. They had fought wars together. Kira was supposed to be loyal until death. But the evidence was clear. Kira was Shadow. She had been helping Varric for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Empress sat in silence for a long time. Her daughters did not know what to say. They had known Kira their whole lives. She was like an aunt to them. Now she was the enemy. The betrayal hurt worse than any physical wound. Jiwan understood that kind of pain. He had lost friends to betrayal before. He told Terran that trust was a weapon that could cut both ways. When people betrayed you, it hurt. But that pain proved you were still capable of trusting. That was not weakness. That was strength. Later, Mira found Jiwan alone in one of the observation rooms. He was looking out at the stars, lost in thought. She asked him if he was okay. He said he was fine. Mira said she did not believe him. Humans were bad liars. Jiwan smiled at that. The little princess was smarter than she looked. Mira asked if Jiwan had a family. He did not answer right away. Then he pulled out the old photo from his jacket, the one with him and his little sister. He told Mira about her, how she loved to draw, how she made him laugh even when he was angry, how she died because he was not there to protect her. Mira looked at the photo for a long time. Then she said something that surprised him. She said his sister would be proud of him. He was protecting people now. He was saving families. That was what heroes did. Jiwan felt tears in his eyes. He had not cried in years. He thanked her quietly. Hana was in the training room trying to exercise despite her broken ribs. She was frustrated. She felt weak and useless. Jiwan came in and told her to rest. She refused. A warrior did not rest while there were battles to fight. Jiwan sat down and told her a story about his military training. He said that during basic training he broke his hand but refused to report it. He thought he had to be tough, but the injury got worse and he could not complete his training. His instructor told him that stupidity was not strength. Knowing your limits was wisdom. Hana listened and finally stopped exercising. She sat beside him in silence. Yuna approached Jiwon with questions about Earth. She wanted to know everything. What were humans really like? What made them different from other species? Jiwon thought about it. He said humans were survivors. They were not the strongest or the smartest, but they were stubborn. They never gave up, even when they should. Yuna asked if that was why he came to help them. Jiwon said he came because he saw Mira's face in that hologram and remembered his sister. But he stayed because all four of them deserved to be together. Family was worth fighting for, even if it was not his family. Terran called everyone together. She had made a decision. They could not hide forever. Varric controlled the military and the government. He would eventually find them. They needed to take the fight to him. They needed to return to the capital and expose his crimes to the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council was a group of powerful species that governed interstellar law. If Terran could prove Varric staged a coup, they would intervene. But reaching the Council would be nearly impossible. Varric controlled all the major space routes. They would have to fight their way through. Jiwon asked what they had for weapons and ships. Not much. The cargo transport was barely functional. They had some small arms and a few explosives. Against Varric's fleet, it was nothing. But Jiwon had fought impossible battles before. The key was not to fight fair. The key was to be unpredictable. He started making plans. They would need to move fast and strike hard. No prolonged battles, hit and run tactics. Use surprise and confusion. Make Varric's advantages meaningless. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. That night, Hana approached Jiwon privately. She said she misjudged him. She thought humans were weak, but she was wrong. He had proven himself in battle. More importantly, he had proven himself as a person. She offered him a formal apology in the Veltharian way, placing her hand over her heart. Jiwon accepted with respect. He told her she was a great warrior and would make an excellent empress someday. Hana smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile. It changed her whole face. She looked younger, less burdened. For a moment, she was just a 19-year-old girl, not a warrior princess. As everyone prepared to leave the station, Mira came to Jiwon with something in her hands. It was a bracelet she had made from spare wires and metal pieces. She said it was a protection charm. In Veltharian culture, family members gave these to warriors before battle. She wanted him to have one. Jiwon put it on his wrist. He said he would wear it until the job was done. Mira hugged him tightly. She whispered that he was brave and kind, and she hoped he would stay with them forever. Jiwon did not know what to say to that. He just hugged her back. They boarded the repaired cargo ship. Yuna had managed to fix the worst of the damage. It would not win any races, but it would fly. Terran took one last look at the empty station. They had found shelter here when they needed it most. Now they were leaving to face their greatest challenge. As they flew toward the capital, everyone was quiet. They all knew what was coming, a battle they might not survive. But they were together. A human and 4 aliens, united by circumstances and loyalty. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a family. The capital city of Zyros Prime looked different now. Military ships patrolled the skies. Soldiers stood on every corner. Varric had turned the beautiful city into a fortress. The people walked with their heads down, afraid to speak. This was not the empire Terran had built. The Galactic Council building stood in the center of the city. It was neutral territory protected by ancient laws. Even Varric could not attack it directly. But getting there would be nearly impossible. His soldiers controlled every street. Snipers watched from the rooftops. It was a death trap. Jiwon studied the route carefully. There was no sneaky way to do this. They would have to walk right through the center of the city. Terran would be bait, drawing all attention. Jiwon would be her shield, protecting her from attacks. Hana and Yuna would create diversions elsewhere to split Varric's forces. Mira would stay with her mother. Hana did not like this plan. She wanted to fight beside her mother, but Jiwon convinced her that splitting up was their only chance. If they all walked together, they would all die together. This way, at least some of them might survive. Hana finally agreed, but she was not happy about it. They landed on the outskirts of the city. Hana and Yuna left immediately to begin their part of the mission. They would attack military supply depots on opposite ends of the city. Varric would have to send soldiers to stop them. That would clear some of the streets for Terran and Jiwon. Terran, Jiwon, and Mira started walking toward the city center. Terran wore her royal armor, making no attempt to hide who she was. People on the streets saw her and gasped. The dead empress was alive. Word spread quickly. Crowds began to gather, some cheering, some just watching in shock. The first attack came from a rooftop. A sniper's shot aimed at Terran's head. Jiwon saw the glint of the scope just in time. He pushed Terran aside and raised the energy shield he had taken from the military base. The shot hit the shield and deflected. Jiwon returned fire, forcing the sniper to take cover. More shots came from different directions. Jiwon moved constantly, keeping himself between Terran and the shooters. Each shot that hit him was absorbed by his armor or shield. He felt every impact, but he did not stop moving. His job was simple. Keep Terran alive. Nothing else mattered. Soldiers appeared in the streets, blocking their path. Terran drew her energy blades and cut through them with deadly precision. She was an empress trained in combat since childhood. Even injured, she was dangerous. The soldiers fell back, shocked by her ferocity. Mira stayed close to her mother, trying to be brave. She was terrified, but she remembered what Jiwon taught her. Fear was okay. Everyone felt fear. What mattered was what you did despite the fear. She kept walking forward, holding her mother's hand tightly. On the other side of the city, Hana and Yuna were causing chaos. Hana fought with fury, destroying supply vehicles and communication towers. Yuna hacked into military systems, sending false orders that confused the soldiers. They were outnumbered, but they were winning through speed and surprise. Varric watched everything from his command center. He was furious. How were they still alive? How was a primitive human protecting the Empress so well? He sent more soldiers, more snipers, more everything. But nothing worked. The human kept moving, kept blocking, kept fighting. Halfway to the council building, Admiral Kira appeared with a battalion of elite soldiers. She stood in the middle of the street, blocking their path. Terran stopped walking. For a moment, the two women just looked at each other. Once they were friends. Now they were enemies. Kira spoke first. She said Terran was weak and foolish. The Empire needed strength, not peace. Terran had failed as an empress. Terran listened quietly, then responded. She said Kira had forgotten what strength meant. Real strength was protecting people, not controlling them. Real strength was mercy, not cruelty. Kira challenged Terran to single combat. It was a traditional Veltharian duel. Whoever won would be right. Terran accepted. Jiwon tried to stop her. She was still injured. But Terran shook her head. This was something she had to do herself. She told Jiwon to protect Mira. The two warriors faced each other in the street. Crowds watched from windows and doorways. This was a battle that would decide the fate of the Empire. Kira attacked first, moving with incredible speed. But Terran was ready. Their energy blades clashed, sending sparks flying. They fought with skill earned through decades of training. Kira was faster, but Terran was stronger. Every strike was precise and deadly. They knew each other's techniques perfectly. They had trained together as children. Now that knowledge was being used to try to kill each other. Terran took several hits, her old wound opening again. Blood stained her armor, but she did not fall. She thought about her daughters. She thought about all the people counting on her. She fought with everything she had left. Finally, she saw an opening. Kira had overextended on an attack. Terran struck. Kira fell to her knees, defeated. Terran stood over her with blade raised. According to tradition, she should kill her opponent. But Terran lowered her weapon. She said enough people had died because of this betrayal. She would not add one more. Kira looked up in surprise, then shame. She had lost everything, including her honor. The elite soldiers saw their commander defeated. Most of them surrendered. They had no loyalty to Varric. They were just following orders. With Kira down, the way to the council building was clear. Terran, Jiwon, and Mira started walking again. They were so close. Then Varric himself appeared. He was done waiting. He came with his personal guard and heavy weapons. He aimed directly at Terran and fired. The shot would kill her instantly, but Jiwon moved faster than thought. He threw himself in front of the blast, his shield taking the full impact. The energy blast shattered the shield and threw Jiwon backward. He hit the ground hard and did not move. Terran screamed. Mira ran to him, calling his name. Jiwon's armor was cracked and smoking. He was barely conscious. But he was alive. Varric prepared to fire again. But before he could, Galactic Council forces appeared. They had been monitoring the situation. Varric's attack on neutral territory had given them authority to intervene. Council soldiers surrounded Varric and his guards. He was trapped. The council representatives approached Terran. They had seen everything. They had evidence of the kidnapping, the coup attempt, and Varric's crimes. They declared him a war criminal and arrested him on the spot. Varric screamed in rage as they took him away. But it was over. He had lost. Terran immediately went to Jiwon. He was hurt badly but alive. Medical teams arrived and began treating him. He looked up at Terran and smiled weakly. He said the job was done. She was safe. Her daughters were safe. Now she needed to be the empress her people needed. Hana and Yuna arrived, having fought their way through the city. They saw Jiwon on the ground and ran to him. Even Hana had tears in her eyes. The human had saved them all. He had become part of their family. They could not lose him now. Jiwon was taken to the Imperial Medical Center. He spent 2 weeks recovering. His body was covered in burns and bruises. But he was tough. Human stubbornness kept him alive when he should have died. Slowly he healed. During his recovery, the princesses visited him every day. Mira brought him drawings she made. Yuna told him about the new books she was reading. Hana practiced meditation with him, teaching him Veltharian techniques. Terran sat beside his bed often, just keeping him company. When Jiwon was finally healed, Terran offered him anything he wanted. Money, land, a position in the government, anything. Jiwon thought about it for a long time. Then he said he wanted to go home. He wanted to return to Earth and face his past. He needed to visit his sister's grave and finally make peace with himself. Terran understood. She had a ship prepared for him, the fastest and best in the fleet. But before he left, she had one more thing to give him. In a special ceremony, she made him an honorary member of the royal family. He would always have a place among them. The princesses stood beside their mother, all four with tears in their eyes. Mira gave him a new protection charm, better made than the first. She made him promise to come back and visit. Yuna gave him a datapad filled with books and music from 100 different worlds. Hana simply hugged him, something she never did with anyone. She whispered that he was the bravest warrior she ever met. Terran walked Jiwon to his ship. She thanked him again, but Jiwon shook his head. He said she gave him something more valuable than money. She gave him redemption. She let him save a family when he failed to save his own. That was worth more than anything. Jiwon flew back to Earth alone. When he arrived, he went straight to the cemetery where his sister was buried. He stood in front of her grave for a long time, just thinking. Then he told her about his adventure, about the alien empress and her 3 daughters, about becoming a shield for people who needed him. He said he hoped she was proud of him. He had been carrying guilt for so long, but now he understood that he could not change the past. All he could do was try to be better in the present, try to protect others, try to honor her memory by living well. Weeks later, Jiwon received a message from Terran. The Empire was stable again. Her daughters were happy. Hana was training to be empress. Yuna was building cultural exchanges with other species. Mira was painting beautiful murals in the palace. Everything was peaceful. The message ended with an invitation. They wanted him to come back for Mira's birthday.